What do you do when the person you love confesses their heart at the exact moment you've learned to let them go? On a rain-soaked Seattle rooftop, under a sky bruised with the last light of day, I stood frozen as Julian's slurred words shattered a year of silence. His 25th birthday party was supposed to be a celebration, but it became the night my world tilted again. My name is Ezra Torres, a 24-year-old graphic designer with a knack for overthinking and a heart that's been bruised but never broken. I'd spent the last year piecing myself back together after Julian Hayes, my best friend and the man I'd loved in secret, chose someone else. Not just anyone. Micah, the charming barista with a smile that could sell coffee to a tea drinker. Julian and Micah had been inseparable, their relationship a public display of affection that felt like a personal affront to my quiet hopes. I'd buried my feelings, convinced myself I was over him, and moved on. Or so I thought. The rooftop bar, the Nest, was alive with laughter and clinking glasses. String lights swayed in the chilly October breeze, casting a golden glow over the crowd. Julian's friends, a mix of tech bros, artists, and college buddies, milled around, their voices blending with the indie playlist humming through the speakers. I stood near the edge, nursing a ginger ale, watching Julian at the center of it all. He was radiant, tousled dark hair, sharp jawline, and those hazel eyes that always seemed to see right through me. He was drunk, though, more than I'd ever seen him. His laughter was too loud, his gestures too wild. Micah was nowhere in sight, which was odd. They were usually glued at the hip. Why do you think someone like Julian, who seems to have everything, friends, love, a promising career, might let himself unravel at his own birthday party? What could drive a person to lose control in a moment meant for joy? I wondered this as I watched him stumble toward me, a half-empty beer bottle dangling from his hand. Ezra, he called, his voice thick with liquor and something heavier. You're still here. You're always here. He stopped inches from me, his breath warm and sharp with whiskey. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, the world shrank to just us. I need to tell you something. My stomach twisted. Julian had a habit of saying things that sounded profound but meant nothing. I braced myself for another drunken ramble about his latest coding project or some random philosophy he'd picked up from a podcast. But then he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. I messed up easy. I messed up so bad. What does it mean to mess up in a way that feels irreversible? Have you ever felt like a single choice could haunt you forever? I didn't know what Julian meant, but the weight in his voice made my heart race. I glanced around, hoping someone would interrupt, but the crowd was too caught up in their own conversations. Julian, you're drunk, I said, trying to keep my tone light. Maybe sit down for a bit. No, he slurred, grabbing my arm. His touch sent a jolt through me, like it always did. You don't get it. I should have told you last year. Before Micah. Before everything. My breath caught. Last year? Before Micah? My mind raced back to that summer, to the nights we'd spent sprawled on his apartment floor, sharing dreams and cheap wine. I'd almost told him then, almost confessed that I loved him, that I'd loved him since we were 19, sneaking into dive bars with fake IDs. But I'd chickened out, and a week later, he was with Micah. I'd spent the next 12 months convincing myself it was for the best. Julian, what are you talking about? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He swayed, his eyes glassy but fierce. I love you, Ezra. I've always loved you. I was too scared to say it, and then I thought Micah was easier. But it's you. It's always been you. The words hit like a freight train. My chest tightened, and the rooftop seemed to spin. How do you process a confession you've dreamed of hearing, but only when it's too late? I stared at him, searching for a sign that this was just the alcohol talking. But his eyes, even blurred with drink, held a raw honesty I'd never seen before. Julian, you're with Micah. I managed, my voice cracking. You can't just. Mike is gone. He interrupted, his voice breaking. We broke up. Last week. I didn't know how to tell you. The world tilted again. Micah was gone. Julian was single. And now, here he was, spilling his heart in a drunken haze. Part of me wanted to grab him, shake him, demand to know why he'd waited so long. Another part wanted to run. I'd spent a year building walls around my heart, and in one moment, Julian was tearing them down. What would you do if the person you loved confessed their feelings, but only after you'd fought so hard to move on? Would you trust their words, or would you protect yourself from the risk of more pain? I didn't know the answer, but as Julian swayed in front of me, I knew this night would change everything. The crowd surged around us, oblivious to the earthquake in my chest. A friend called Julian's name, pulling him back to the party. He stumbled away, leaving me standing there, my ginger ale forgotten in my hand. The Seattle skyline glittered in the distance, indifferent to my turmoil. I needed answers, but first, I needed to survive this night. The rain started to fall, light at first, then heavier, soaking my jacket as I lingered on the rooftop. Julian's confession echoed in my head, each word a spark igniting memories I'd tried to bury. Why do confessions always come at the worst possible time? I couldn't shake the image of his eyes, desperate and unguarded, or the way his hand had lingered on my arm. I found a quiet corner near the bar, where the overhang offered some shelter. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my friend Lena, who'd left the party early. You okay? Julian looked like a mess. I didn't reply. How could I explain the chaos in my head? Instead, I watched the crowd, trying to piece together what had happened to Julian and Micah. No one seemed to know they'd broken up. The secrecy gnawed at me. Why hadn't Julian told me? We'd been best friends for years, closer than anyone. Or so I'd thought. A memory surfaced. Last summer, Julian and I at Golden Gardens Park, watching the sunset over Puget Sound. He'd been quiet that day, his usual energy replaced by something heavier. I'd asked if he was okay, and he'd just smiled and said, I'm figuring it out. A week later, he was with Micah. Had he been wrestling with his feelings for me even then? The thought made my chest ache. What does it mean to love someone but choose someone else? Is it fear, or is it something deeper, a need to protect yourself from the vulnerability of true connection? I didn't have answers, but I needed to find Julian. I couldn't let his drunken words hang between us without context. I spotted him near the DJ booth, laughing with a group of friends. His smile was forced, his eyes darting like he was searching for an escape. I pushed through the crowd, my heart pounding. Julian, I called, loud enough to cut through the noise. He turned, and for a moment, his face softened. Ezra, he said, stepping away from his friends. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Don't. I cut him off. Not here. Can we talk somewhere quiet? He nodded, and we slipped away to a small alcove near the rooftop's edge. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the city lights shimmered below. Julian leaned against the railing, his hands shaking. I meant it, he said, his voice steadier now. What I said earlier. I didn't know how to say it before. Why now? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Why wait until you're drunk, and I've spent a year trying to forget you? He winced, running a hand through his damp hair. I was scared, okay? Loving you, it's big. It's real. Micah was safe. I thought I could make it work with him, but I was wrong. His words stung. Safe. I wasn't safe. What does it mean to love someone who sees you as a risk? I wanted to scream, to tell him how much his choice had hurt me. But I also saw the pain in his eyes, the regret that mirrored my own. Julian, you broke my heart, I said, my voice trembling. You don't get to just waltz back in and say you love me like it fixes everything. I know, he whispered. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know. The honesty in his voice disarmed me. I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't. Not when he was standing there, raw and vulnerable, the boy I'd loved for years. But trust is fragile. Once broken, can it ever be rebuilt? I didn't know, but as the rain fell around us, I felt the weight of his confession pulling me back into his orbit. The next morning, Seattle was draped in fog, the kind that makes everything feel like a dream you can't quite grasp. I sat in my apartment, a small studio in Capitol Hill, staring at my sketchbook. I hadn't drawn in weeks, but Julian's confession had stirred something in me. My pencil moved, tracing the outline of his face, those hazel eyes, that crooked smile. Why do we hold on to the things that hurt us most? I hadn't spoken to Julian since the party. He'd texted me at 2 a.m., "I'm sorry, EZ. Can we talk tomorrow?" But I hadn't replied. I needed time to process, to figure out what I wanted. Did I still love him? Or was I just chasing the ghost of who we used to be? A knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Lena, her dark curls tucked under a beanie, a coffee cup in each hand. "You look like hell," she said, handing me a latte. "Spill. What happened with Julian?" I told her everything. His confession, the breakup with Micah, the way my heart had betrayed me by leaping at his words. Lena listened, her brown eyes sharp with understanding. "So, what are you going to do?" she asked. "You can't just ignore this. What would you do if the person you loved finally admitted they felt the same, but only after breaking your trust?" I wanted to believe Julian, but doubt gnawed at me. Was he just lonely, reeling from his breakup? Or was this real? "I don't know," I admitted. "I spent so long moving on. I can't just dive back in." Lena nodded. "Fair, but you need to talk to him. You'll drive yourself crazy otherwise." She was right. I texted Julian, asking him to meet me at a cafe in Fremont. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting by the window, looking more sober but no less haunted. His blonde curls were a mess, and his hands fidgeted with a napkin. "Hey," he said, his voice soft. "Thanks for coming." We talked for hours, the conversation a tangle of apologies, confessions, and questions. Julian told me about his breakup with Micah, how it had been unraveling for months, how he'd realized he was trying to be someone he wasn't. "I thought I could be happy with him," he said. "But every time I was with him, I was thinking about you." His words were a knife, cutting through my defenses. But they also raised a question. Can love be enough if it comes with a history of pain? I didn't have an answer. But as we sat there, the space between us felt smaller, like the gap we'd built over the past year was starting to close. Weeks passed, and Julian and I started rebuilding what we'd lost. It wasn't easy. Trust is like a shattered glass. You can glue it back together, but the cracks remain. We spent evenings walking through Pike Place Market, talking about everything and nothing. We laughed like we used to, but there was a new weight to our conversations, a shared understanding of what we'd almost lost. One night, under the neon glow of the market's public sign, Julian took my hand. "Ezra," he said, his voice steady for the first time in weeks. "I don't want to lose you again. I want to do this right. What does it mean to give someone a second chance? Is it a leap of faith or a surrender to hope?" I looked into his eyes and saw the boy I'd loved for years, but also the man who'd hurt me. I didn't know if we could make it work, but I wanted to try. "I'm scared," I admitted, "but I want this too." He smiled, and for the first time in a year, it felt like we were on the same page. We stood there, hand in hand, the city buzzing around us. The future was uncertain, but it was ours to shape. Love is messy, imperfect, and sometimes it comes too late. But maybe, just maybe, it's worth fighting for. Julian and I didn't have all the answers, but we had each other, and for now, that was enough.